I need a sip of water because the next one is bad. I don't even want to talk about this one. Like, people who don't really have a very interesting life shouldn't be writing memoirs. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to share with you all of the books that I read in Q2 of 2025. So they're all the books that I read in April, May, and June. I obviously did a Q1 video as well, so if you're interested, I will link that up on the screen. And the reason I started making these reading videos is because for the first time I did the best and worst books that I read in 2024 and everyone seemed to love it. So I was like, say no more. Clearly you want me to talk about books and I am an oversharer, as you can tell. So I will gladly talk your ear off about all the books that I've been reading this year. I am mostly into fiction. I very rarely read nonfiction, and even in fiction, I typically read romance or thriller or recently fantasy, and then your regular fiction books as well. And so I read 13 books in Q2, which is really interesting because in Q1, I also read 13 books, and now I'm going to give you my honest opinions on all of them, which one I recommend, which ones I don't recommend, because there are both of each. So let's get into it. The first book that I read in Q2, so in April, I read Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. I've read a few of her books now, which I gave 4.75 stars, which is, I think, one of the highest rated books that I've had this year so far. I haven't hit a 5-star book yet, so if you have any recommendations, please let me know down below. I have been struggling, and even last year, I think I only had 3 or 4 books that were 5 stars. We're halfway through the year and I still haven't had one, which is kind of sad. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. Back to Small Great Things. This book is about a Black woman in the US who is a nurse, and then there is like a white supremacist family that comes in and things kind of go wrong and they basically decide to file a lawsuit against the nurse. So part of me was like, oh my gosh, like another book about healthcare, because I work in healthcare and I honestly read to get away from real life problems. So even though it was like, and it also is labor and delivery, which is interesting because experience is mostly in prenatal genetics, so it was like a little bit too close for comfort. But overall, like, I thought the story was interesting. It was from both perspectives. Cannot necessarily relate to both individuals, but the way the story was told, it did make you see perspectives from both sides. The only thing with the book was, I know some people didn't love it as much. The thing that like made me feel a little bit uncomfortable is when authors write books from perspectives that they don't necessarily identify with. And I know that there's a lot of research and, you know, interviews that get done before even writing this book, but part of me is always like, is this okay for people to write books like this? You guys can let me know what your opinions are down below. And then the end, it was a good ending, but it was just like too neat for me. I don't know how to explain it. Like, everything just ended perfectly, which is not realistic. So the entire book was meant to be very realistic, but then at the end there was like a little bow on top, and I just really didn't like that. But other than that, like, it was pretty slow, and especially the first half, I was like really, it was a little bit difficult to get into, but towards the end I was okay, like, I gotta finish it. Like, I remember staying up really late trying to finish the book. So because of that, I gave it 4.75 stars. On Goodreads, I always rate down, so I rated it at 4 stars, but it was close to 5. Like I said, I don't really read nonfiction, but I read this book that's called Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, which is a very popular book, and it is a memoir. And part of me always thinks that like people who don't really have a very interesting life shouldn't be writing memoirs. And her memoir, or her like life story, was basically about literally everything she knows about love, but in different relationships, like romantic relationships, friendships, parents, families, all that kind of thing. It was okay, but throughout the entire book I was like, why am I reading this? Like, this is not something that is advancing my life in any way, shape, or form. I feel like I was the target demographic for the book, a girl in her 20s, but I just didn't feel it was super relatable. Like, a lot of it was her like partying and drinking like heavily throughout like her college and I guess university days, kind of like falling in and out of relationships and her friends and how they move on and things like that. And it just seemed kind of like whiny to me. I don't want to be rude because it's someone's life story, but I just didn't understand like why they're writing a memoir and why like people are reading it and why people loved it. So because of that, I gave it 3.9 stars. So 3.9 stars means that anything less than 4 stars I wouldn't recommend to somebody. So I personally wouldn't recommend a book like that to someone I know. Like, I didn't super enjoy it, but it wasn't like poorly written or anything like that. It just wasn't my cup of tea. Then we have another 3.9 stars, and this one might be controversial. This is the book All the Colors of the Dark by Whitaker. And it took me months to finish this book. It was very, very, very slow. It has like pretty good ratings, like on Goodreads it's 4.27, and honestly, I returned this book to the library so many times and took it back out, and I kept returning it. And at that point, like, I'm lost in the plot. Like, I don't really care. I'm not very invested. The story itself was quite interesting. It was kind of like a thriller, but also like a psychological thriller. In the beginning, I was hooked. Like, I remember the first like couple pages or the first couple chapters, I was like, whoa, what's gonna happen? Like, this is crazy. Like, you know, how is this gonna end? But then right after that, you know, big dramatic incident that happens in the beginning, it went into this like lull, and then it just goes on for years and years and years of like their life, basically from childhood to adulthood. And it just like wasn't my vibe. So because of that, I gave it 3.9 stars. So I don't recommend it, but I can see why people would say it's a good book. Okay, then we get into a 4 stars that was given to The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Obviously very popular book. It's becoming a movie very soon, I believe. This book I listened to as an audiobook, and I really liked the audiobook because they had accents, so like they're British accents, and I was like, okay, this is like definitely making things much better for me. I would recommend it, so 4 stars means I recommend it. It wasn't like phenomenal, like it didn't blow my mind, but it was a very light-hearted read. And for people who are just looking for something, you know, just like casual, take your mind off of things, like, you know, a fun story, and it was really nice to like listen to the perspective of older people, like in a retirement community, kind of what their life looks like towards the end of their life. So that was really interesting. And also to remember that older people also have personalities and lives and memories, and they still are like, you know, people who contribute to society and stuff. So just like hearing their perspective and their life was really interesting. I would totally read the other books in the series, so it's just number 1. I would again listen to an audiobook for it because I thought the voice characters and the accents were really fun. And I will be watching the movie when it comes out as well. Okay, and then we have a Carley Fortune book. I get all my books from the library, by the way, and I can't even tell you I got so lucky with some of these books. Like, I just put myself on the list, like, you know, putting a request in for these books, and somehow I eventually end up getting it. Now, I do have 3 library cards for 3 different districts, but I tend to use one of them the most, and the other ones I keep as a backup. If my main one is like really like the list is really long, then I'll look to the other options, but I typically just stay with one. It's fine. But anyways, so I read One Golden Summer by Carley Fortune, and I gave this 4.25 stars, which is pretty good. It is one of the better romance novels that I've read, and I did recommend this to my friend. I didn't realize actually that it was linked to another book that of Carley Fortune's that I read. I didn't realize it was like a spin-off on some of those characters. I listened to this as an audiobook as well. I tend to listen to more like casual, like fun books through audiobooks, because then you can kind of like not necessarily have to pay attention 100%. I guessed what was gonna happen. Like, obviously, you know they're gonna end up together. Like, that's not the part that I guessed. There was something else, like an inciting incident that happens, like the climax, I guessed that as well. I did like the characters. They were both like likable in general, which is very important for me. I don't like people who are not likable, and there was just enough spice as well. Like, the spice kept you on the edge of your seat, which is really good in a romance book. Like, it's sometimes too much or too little. I have to say sometimes it was a bit too much, but it wasn't like, there's another book in here that was like too much, but this one was really good. It was honestly a sweet story, and I do like Carley Fortune. She's a Canadian author. She writes about small towns in Ontario, which is where I'm from, so just hearing about like the lake life and the cottage life, like, it just makes you feel cozy and warm. So I did really like that. If you're looking for a summer read, so obviously I'm posting this video in the summer, if you're looking for a summer read, this is her newest book, and I would definitely recommend it. 4.25 stars is not bad for a romance. I need a sip of water because the next one is bad. This is the worst book that I read so far in this year. Maybe not ever, but like pretty bad. My friend and I read this book as part of our book club. We basically read one book together a month and then we talk about it. This book is called Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh, and I gave it 2.5 stars, which is the lowest I've ever rated a book on Goodreads. So I round down obviously to 2 stars. And what's wild to me is that on Goodreads, this book is rated 4.45 stars. By who? Like, who is rating this book like that high? I just don't Okay, let me start from the beginning. I read this book. I read the physical book. My friend listened to the audiobook. The audiobook also has character accents. So it's about an Irish couple, essentially. It's about Irish kids who fall in love. I don't have a problem with like the Irish accent or even like the slang. I thought it was fun. So like the first couple pages is just like a glossary of all the different slang words that they use. I've been to Ireland, fun, no problem with that. I just couldn't get behind the characters, especially the main girl. I did not like, I couldn't stand her. The guy was okay, but I couldn't stand him either because some of the stuff that he was saying, so like one of the issues that they have is that he's a couple years older than her, and they kept bringing that up again and again as if like it was, I guess, like illegal that he was 17 and she was 15. And they just kept bringing that up as like, oh, I can't be with her. She's too young for me. She's too young. I'm like, what? Like that, like you guys are, he's in grade 12, she's in grade 10. I just don't understand. So that was like a huge thing. And then there was just like so much tension throughout the story, and I wanted to like throw it across the room multiple times because it just wasn't making sense. It was so slow, like barely anything happened, and it was just very, very dramatic. It was so dramatic to the point where I was like, I can't even finish this. This is not like enjoyable for me. It's not realistic. My friend did show me the audiobook, and with the Irish accents, it was kind of hard to understand what was going on. Either way, like this is a series. This is book number 1. I will not be reading the other ones, even though they're based off, again, spin-offs from characters in the first book. I just won't be reading it. Like, I would not recommend this book. Please don't read it. If you want to read it, you can. I did find a very funny Goodreads review, which I'm going to put up on the screen right now, that accurately sums up how terrible this book was. So after reading this review and hearing my opinion, if you want to read it, you're on your own. I can't help you there. Kind of a spin-off book from the Powerless series. So the Powerless series is 3 books, and then Reckless is kind of, I think it's like a 1.5. So it's a story based off on one of the side characters, if not the main characters. And it was interesting to kind of see what was going on in the background while you're reading book number 1. Obviously this character shows up multiple times, but their stories have not really delved into. So reading about their story was very, very short. It's one of the shortest books that I've read. That was really interesting because then some of those characters come back later on in the series. And yeah, it was a very short read, very easy read. I gave it 4.5 stars. Like I had no issues with the book. Again, it was short and sweet, which is nice because sometimes books like tend to draw things out and then you're like, okay, like this is not adding any value to the story anymore. So if you're reading the Powerless series and you're thinking about reading 1.5, then I would say for sure, go ahead. Okay, next up, I gave 4.5 stars to I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy, which is another nonfiction memoir autobiography. Like I said earlier, I don't love reading these books. I did give this one 4.5 stars though, so you're probably a little bit confused, as am I. So I listened to the audiobook, which I think is a huge reason why I rated this book so highly. So one of my friends told me that she actually read the physical book and it was a very different experience. I think when you're hearing the story through the author's like voice and she's kind of telling it like through her own perspective, you hear the inflections, you're definitely more invested in the story. Jennette McCurdy is ex-Nickelodeon Disney star, and so obviously I grew up watching her on iCarly. I had no idea what was going on in her life. As expected, you wouldn't know about someone's life, especially when they're a child star. And hearing about her relationship with her mom and her family and the difficulties that she faced, especially with her body image and binge eating and things like that. Just hearing that perspective of, you know, what's going on behind the scenes, it was very interesting. And I did obviously feel bad for her as well. And it just kind of puts things into perspective about the different pressures that people are feeling and also like how messed up relationships can be. So I went obviously down a Google rabbit hole to like figure out what's going on with her life right now. She barely has any social media, which would make sense given her experience growing up. The only thing she ever posts on is about her book, which has done really, really well. Unrelated but related. Right now, like Justin Bieber is being highlighted in media in a terrible way, and that's also because of his interactions with paparazzi and growing up like as like a famous child star. And just hearing like the perspective of someone who didn't want that attention, like she was literally forced into it, but also like how intrusive it can be to be in the limelight in that way. It just makes you think twice before like, you know, treating a celebrity a certain way or trying to find out information about their life and just being disrespectful overall. Like these are still human beings. So if you're interested in like memoirs and autobiographies and stuff like that, like I definitely recommend it. The audiobook is the way to go, and that way you can kind of like break it up sometimes because it's very, very heavy. Like the topics are very heavy, and I listen to audiobooks on my my way like to work and back from work because my commute can sometimes be a long time. And it's interesting because my job can also be very like emotionally taxing. It was hard for me to listen to at sometimes. Like sometimes I would be like, okay, I'm not in the mood to listen to this shit that's going on in her life, because it's one thing to have like a fiction sad story, but to have like a real memoir sad story, it's just like too much all in one. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about reading this book or listening to it. But other than that, it was a good book. It wasn't like the best written or anything like that. I did appreciate having the opportunity to learn from her perspective. It's third and final book in the Powerless series, and I had mixed feelings about it. So I think I rated first two books in the series, I rated them 4.5 stars. I talked about this in a previous video, but a lot of people didn't like the second book that much. It was much slower in terms of pace and storyline compared to the first one. In the third one though, I felt like it was actually like much slower, and there's a pretty big twist in the book which I had no idea was coming. And when it came, which was like super late into the book, my jaw was on the floor. So at that point, by the third book, I had already been invested in the characters, so I was gonna read it no matter what, but it definitely was not as good as the first two. Overall, I totally would recommend the series. Like if you're into like romance and fantasy but at a slower pace, and also where it's not so like otherworldly, I think it would be a good option for you. And I honestly did like both the characters, the male and female characters, at the end of it. We are in the final stretch, the last three books. So the next book that I read was Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. I gave 4.15 stars to. This is my first Sarah J Maas book ever, and I wanted to love it, but I didn't love it. I know with a series, there's like 10 books in the series, and I do have the next book on hold, but I'm not like very excited to read it. I don't know why, like everyone's obsessed with her and all of her books, and maybe I started with the wrong series. Like let me know what you think. But the characters were like, obviously there's like two male characters and she's like deciding between the two of them. I did feel myself like going towards one team over the other. The main female character is a badass. Like I just like books like that. As you can tell, Powerless was also that kind of vibe. Even the Empyrean series is kind of like just really strong female characters, but then they're also like going through some shit and then fall in love at the same time. I didn't think it was that amazing. Like I honestly didn't. There was a twist. It's a kind of like a mystery, like you're trying to figure some stuff out, and I kind of figured it out. I will obviously keep reading, more so for the romance I'm reading, not necessarily about the story or the plot. But if you guys have any recommendations of what other series of hers are better, or why you really like Throne of Glass, like let me know as well, because I'm like not super impressed, but I didn't hate it either. Next up, I gave 4.5 stars to Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, which is another romance. Clearly I'm going through something right now, which I will talk about later. I'm not actually going through something, but I need to step away from the romance books for a bit. I read this book in one day. I actually did a solo trip to Victoria, which I will be posting a vlog about that later on. So I took myself to the West Coast. I literally sat by the ocean and I read the entire weekend. It was amazing. This is one of the books that I read, and Throne of Glass was actually one of the books that I finished in Victoria as well. I finished Better Than the Movies in one day. I am actually about to go to the library and get the second book. It wasn't like an amazing story. Let me just start off by saying that. It wasn't like mind-boggling, like oh my god, masterpiece. It wasn't like that. It was actually very childish. It was about like a high school couple essentially, but it was also very cheesy. So like I'm not setting this up for success, but it was such a quick read. The main character, I really liked her because she was quirky and she knew herself and she wasn't afraid to say things and be different, which I really liked, especially for someone her age. And then just the way like they fell in love and everything, I just really liked that as well. And it was a sweet story. Like it was just sweet in general. It did get 4.27 stars on Goodreads, which is pretty good. And I think because I finished it and I was in such a high, like after reading it so quickly and just like being like caught up in this world we're into romance, I gave it 4.5 stars. It was not that amazing, but I would recommend it if you're looking for a very quick read, especially if you're in like a slump, like a reading slump. I would definitely recommend this book. The second one apparently it's not rated as good, so I don't know how it's gonna go and how it's gonna be, but I'll keep you updated. I will read it in Q3, so you'll hear about it in my next video. And then the last book, I don't even want to talk about this one. The last book that I read was Flawless by Elsie Silver, and I gave this book 3.9 stars. This is the Chestnut Springs series. My first ever Elsie Silver book. Again, Canadian, I didn't know. I actually own one of her books here, Wild Love. Is up here. I haven't read it yet. It was like, It was a lot. It's like more of a vacation type book because it is super spicy. Like some of these things I was reading that was happening in the book and I was like, am I even allowed to read this? Like it was a little bit too much detail for my liking, to the point where the story itself was fine. Like the characters, like, yeah, you're rooting for them, blah, blah, blah. But then to the point, like it became so about the spice that it kind of like took away from the story. And I was like, I actually like don't want to read this anymore. I don't want to like, I don't want to sit down and crack open this book. Like you can't like, you know, sometimes like I read before going to bed, or sometimes I read when I'm at like lunch at work, or even in public. This is not one of those books that you can read in those situations. This is like, I'm on the beach, I'm only reading for 7 days straight and I need to like just, you know, get my fill of all of the romance and stuff. It's kind of like that vibe. So I'm not going to be reading the other ones in the series. I wonder how it would be in an audiobook, because sometimes people listen to really spicy audiobooks and I wonder what the experience would have been like. Because like, what if somebody walked in and you were listening to it? Like it was wild. It was wild. Let me just say, it wasn't super highly rated on Goodreads either. It was 4.03. Like I said, it is a series. I think the other books go based off of other characters. The other books are spin-offs on other characters that are in the first book, similar to some of the other series that we talked about. So I don't know, like let me know if you guys have read it, if you guys are into Elsie Silver. Like I said, I do have Wild Love on my bookshelf that I haven't read yet. I'll probably take it with me on a vacation that I'll go on, but otherwise like I can't in good conscience like recommend this book to people. So those were all 13 books that I read in April, May, and June of this year. I have obviously stacks of other books that I'm reading for the rest of the year. If you have any suggestions, especially things that you think I would like as 5-star books, please let me know. I'm also kind of not interested in romance anymore. For whatever reason, all of my holds from the library were romance, and now I'm kind of tired of it. So I've read a little bit too much romance, and obviously I'm filming this in July, so I've already finished a couple books in Q3. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have different opinions than me, if I offended you, that was not my intention. Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to see more of my content, my vlogs, Jennette counselor life, book stuff, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.